power. Off-grid vans are absolutely awesome. You can have 240 volt power when you haven't got 240 volt coming into the van from a cord. You can be in the middle of the bush, down the river, on the beach, and you can use your 240 volt power with a 3000 watt inverter. We use a Red Arc 3000 watt inverter. It will run your aircon off-grid, not a problem at all. It'll run your toaster. It'll run your air fryer. It'll run your kettle. So when you want to use a 240 volt appliance, whether it be your toaster, your kettle, or whatever, turn the inverter on. There's a switch inside the van, which we'll show you in a moment. Use your 240 volt appliance, and then when you finish using it, turn the inverter back off. This inverter will drain a little bit of power when it's in standby mode. Not a lot, so it's not going to kill your batteries, but it will drain some power. So make sure you turn that off when you finish using your toaster and your kettle, etc. If you can't get 240 volt power for any reason, check your main circuit breakers inside the van, but also check the circuit breaker on the back side of the inverter. If that's tripped for any reason, that will cut all power to your power points. So just make sure that's on. When you're using your inverter or you're using 240 volt mains lead power, you'll have power in every power point throughout the van. We wire them, so some vans there's only one power point for this and one for that. We wire every power point so they can be used with an inverter power or 240 volt mains power. There's a couple of plugs on the back here. So we have AC coming in, AC going out. There is a 240 volt power point on there. You're not going to need to use that. There's plenty of power points around the van, so you won't be worrying about that. And this is actually situated under the bed, so not easily accessible as such, so you're not going to need to use that. The main thing here is that circuit breaker. If the 240 volt isn't coming through, check to see if your circuit breaker is tripped or not. If it hasn't tripped, then if it's tripped, turn it back on and you'll be fine. So that's how you use your inverter. The second part of the power is obviously the lithium batteries. Lithium batteries are very good compared to an AGM battery. So what that means is you can get a lot more life cycles out of the battery. You use a lot more capacity of the battery. The lithium battery you can take right down to zero virtually, whereas an AGM battery you can only take down to 20% and have to recharge it again. So one of the downfalls with a lithium battery though, if it does go dead flat for any reason, there's no real rhyme or reason why it would happen that way. You might have drained the power too much. You might have had no power coming in, really cloudy days. If they happen to go dead flat, you can't just plug a 240 volt plug back into the side of the van and they'll charge up again. What you need to do with lithium batteries is wake them up. So the best way to wake them up, next to the batteries inside the van under the bed, the batteries are in a sealed box by law, they have to be. So they have a box around them, they have a vent to outside, they have screws and silicone around the top of the lid. So what we do, we put the shunt on the outside of the box. What a shunt is where your main earth wire and main power wire come on. So what you can do is get yourself a jump starter similar to this. You plug your negative onto your earth, you plug your positive onto your positive, turn your jump starter on, it will actually wake the batteries up. Once they're awake, you can plug a 240 volt lead in or solar coming in and your batteries will recharge back up again. That's probably the only downfall with them, but apart from that, lithium batteries are much better than AGM. Don't worry about them exploding and stuff anymore. That's very, very rare. We've never had one in our vans, so they're quite safe to use nowadays, but they're vented to outside for that reason. But get yourself a jump starter just in case something does happen to your power. If you lose power, obviously, you can't use your roof, you can't use your 240 volt, etc. So even with if you lose power, you can't use 12 volt even. So you don't really want to lose power if you can help it. So make sure you've got either 240 volt coming in or plenty of solar coming in so to prevent that. But the way you do it, if you need to, is get yourself a jump starter and you can wake the batteries back up and then recharge them up. If you need to jump start your batteries for any reason, as I said, you can use the shunt that's in the van, which is on the outside of the box. However, if for some reason that doesn't work, you can jump start the battery from the battery itself. What you'll need to do is take the silicone out around the top of the box, take the screws out, take the lid off, and then you can access the batteries that way. By doing that, negative on negative, positive on positive, start your jump starter, that will wake the battery up. Once they're awake, you can recharge them again, not a problem at all. That's in the worst case scenario. You should be able to do this from the shunt if you need to, but if you have to, you can get the batteries that are inside the box. There'll be 2 of them. Just choose one, wake them up, and then away you go, you can recharge.